That makes sense. Even though counseling is ending, the skills and insight you develop do not disappear. What are some of the things you plan to continue doing to manage stress moving forward?
I plan to keep using my planner and breaking tasks into smaller pieces. I also want to continue setting boundaries when I feel overwhelmed instead of trying to do everything. I think one of the biggest things I learned is that when I let everything stay in my head, it starts to feel way bigger than it actually is. Writing things down has helped me see what I really need to do instead of just feeling panicked. I also want to keep checking in with myself more because before counseling, I was just pushing through everything and not paying attention to how stressed I was. Now I try to notice it sooner.
That sounds like a really thoughtful plan. What I'm hearing is that you are not only using practical strategies like planning and organizing, but you are also becoming more aware of your own stress level and learning to respond to it earlier. That is a really important change because sometimes people do not struggle from a lack of effort. Sometimes they struggle because they are trying to carry too much for too long without slowing down enough to recognize what's happening. When you compare how you handle stress now to how you handled stress when you first came to counseling, what differences stand out to you the most?
I think the biggest difference is that I don't shut down as fast. Before, if I got overwhelmed, I would procrastinate and avoid things because it felt easier to not deal with them in the moment. Then of course that made everything worse because deadlines would get closer and I would feel even more anxious. Now I still get stressed, but I try to stop and ask myself what the next step is. I've gotten better at not making everything feel like one giant emergency. I also think I'm less hard on myself than I used to be. Before I used to think being overwhelmed meant I was falling, but now I can see that sometimes I just need to reset and make a plan.
Okay. This is a really meaningful shift. You are describing growth in both your behavior and your self talk. Earlier in the counseling session, it sounded like stress would quickly turn into avoidance and self criticism. Now you are describing a more balanced response where you recognize the stress, slow things down, and work through it in a more intentional way. You also mentioned being less hard on yourself. Can you say a little bit more about that? How has that how has the way you talk to yourself changed over the course of counseling?
I think before I was really negative with myself. If I if I missed something or got behind, I would immediately start thinking that I was irresponsible or that I just wasn't good at handling life. I made everything really personal. Now I still get frustrated, but I don't go straight into attacking myself. I'm more likely to think, okay, I'm stressed. I need to figure out what's going on, or maybe I took on too much this week. I guess now I'm more likely to look at the situation instead of assuming something is wrong with me as a person.
That is an important change because self awareness and self compassion can make a huge difference in how people cope with challenges. When someone is constantly criticizing themselves, it often becomes harder to solve the actual problem. But when someone can step back and respond with more balance, it creates more room for problem solving and growth. What do you think helped you make that shift from criticizing yourself to being more understanding of what you were going through?
I think talking things through helped a lot. Sometimes I didn't even realize how unfair I was being to myself until I said things out loud. I also think it helped when we talked about how being busy all the time and helping everybody else was affecting me. I was acting like I should be able to do school, work, family responsibilities, and everything else without getting tired or overwhelmed. Once I started seeing that more clearly, it made sense why I was struggling. It didn't mean I was weak, it just meant I needed better boundaries and better ways to manage things.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes part of the counseling process is helping clients understand the bigger picture of what they're carrying. When people only look at the outcome, like missed assignments or procrastination, they may miss the deeper reason underneath it. But when they start to understand the full context, it often becomes easier to respond with more clarity and less shame. As you think about moving forward after counseling ends, which strategies do you believe will be the most important for you to continue practicing on a regular basis?
I think staying I think staying organized is still going to be really important for me because when I don't have some kind of structure, I get overwhelmed fast. I also think boundaries are going to be a big one because a lot of stress came from saying yes too much and feeling like I had to take care of everything. Another thing I want to keep doing is asking for help sooner. I usually wait until I'm already ready, I'm already stressed, and then I feel like I'm trying to fix everything at the last minute. I want to get better at noticing when I'm starting to struggle instead of waiting until I feel completely buried.
If you begin to feel overwhelmed again in the future, what signs might tell you that you need additional support?
If I'm if I start missing assignments again, procrastinating a lot, or feeling like everything is piling up on me up again, that will probably be a sign that I need to ask for help. I also think if I start feeling irritated all the time, or if I notice that I'm avoiding things that normally wouldn't be that hard, that would be another sign. When I when I'm overwhelmed, I tend to act like I'm fine at first, but then I start shutting down a little bit. I stop wanting to deal with things, and then my anxiety gets worse because I know stuff is building up. So if I notice those patterns coming back, that would probably tell me I need to do something before it gets worse.
That's a really strong level of self awareness. Recognizing those warning signs early is often one of the most helpful parts of growth because it gives you a chance to respond before stress becomes unmanageable. Sometimes people think progress means they will never struggle again, but progress can also mean recognizing the struggle sooner, understanding it better, and using healthier tools to respond to it. When you notice those warning signs, what do you think would be the first step you want to take?
I think the first thing I would do, I think the first thing I would want to do is stop ignoring it. I will probably sit down and write out everything that is stressing me out so I can see it clearly. Instead of just feeling overwhelmed by it, then I would look at what I usually need to do first and what can wait. I also think I would want to talk to someone I trust, like my aunt or maybe a professor. If if school was part of the problem, I think just saying it out loud helps me feel less alone and less stuck.
That sounds like a healthy and realistic plan. You are identifying specific actions you can take, which is important because it makes it more likely that you will actually use those steps if you need them. Writing things down, prioritizing tasks, and reaching out to supportive people are all strategies that can reduce stress and create a sense of direction. How confident do you feel right now in your ability to use those tools on your own after counseling?
I feel more confident than I did before. I'm still a little nervous because it's different knowing I won't have these sessions anymore. But I don't feel helpless the way I used to. I think before counseling, I really didn't know how to deal with stress in a healthy way. Now I feel like I have actual tools and I also know myself better. I know that I know what tends to happen when I start getting overwhelmed, and I think that helps me feel a feel a little more prepared.
It makes sense to feel both confident and a little nervous. And it can bring mixed emotions, especially when the counseling relationship and has been a meaningful source of support. Feeling nervous does not take away from your progress in many ways. It shows that the progress mattered to you. Since this is our final session together, how are you feeling about the counseling process ending?
I feel proud, but I also feel a little sad. I'm proud because I know I've changed and I know I'm handling things better now that now than I was before. But I'm also a little sad because this was a space where I could be honest about what was going on without feeling judged. It helped me slow down and really think about myself in a way I wasn't doing before. So I think it's a mix of good feelings and a little mix of anxiety about doing things my own way.
That is very honest response. And those mixed feelings are very normal. Ending and helping relationships can bring pride, gratitude, uncertainty, and even sadness. When you think about the counseling process as a whole, what part of the growth feels most significant to you?
I think the biggest thing is that I stopped seeing myself as someone who was just failing at everything. That was a really heavy feeling I carried when I first started. I felt like I couldn't keep up and like everybody else handled life better than I did. Now I don't see myself that way. I still have stressful moments, but I don't automatically assume that means I'm incapable.
That level of awareness is a great strength. One of the goals of counseling is help clients feel confident using their tools they've developed even after the counseling relationship ends.
I do feel more confident now. I know I'm still going to have stressful times, but I also know I'm not the same person I was when I first came in. I feel like I understand myself better and I feel more prepared to manage things in a healthier way.
I want to thank you for the work you put in to your progress process. I've seen a lot of growth in you and approach challenges and advocate for yourself. I wish you the best moving forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support and everything I learned during counseling.
I will now provide critiques from the interview. So the strengths. In the mock session, I attempted to demonstrate a client-centered approach by allowing the client to identify and articulate her goals rather than defining them. Just like it said in Chang ETAL 2018, the practitioner's role is to help clients clarify their concerns and goals rather than impose their own interpretations. Another strength was addressing the termination stage of helping relationships in the intentional and supportive way. I provided a space for the client to discuss her feelings about the ending of the counseling sessions. And then also I attempted to use strengths based perspectives throughout the final portion. Finally, with the strengths, was my effort to maintain a supportive and respectful tone. The weaknesses, one weakness in my role play that I could have spent more time reflecting was the client's emotions before moving into problem solving and summarizing. Another one was improvement would be expanding on the client's strengths and resources earlier in the conversation. A third one I would say is I may have structured some responses in a way that were slightly more formal. And then another one I would say is even more follow-up questions to deepen the client's to help them explore a little bit more in their thinking process. In the future practices for improvement, I will continue developing my interviewing skills by focusing more on reflective listening and allowing the client additional time to express their experiences. In addition, I want to continue improving my ability to guide termination conversations. I also plan to keep practicing my use of open-ended questions. Learning from like Chang again. He had a lot of good. They had a lot of good references in there. Overall, the assignment helped me understand the importance of evaluating goals, monitoring progress, and creating a healthy ending to a counseling session. Thank you for watching my role play and critique presentation.